All right, so your last assignment, you're going to create an abstract design. So you're basically just adding shape, line, and form along with lighting and arranging them to create an interesting composition. So to start, take this box. You can leave it there or you can get rid of it. I don't know. It's up to you if you want to use it. But you want to go to this little world property. All right. And we're going to put on the shading tab so we can see this. So we're going to set everything up and then we'll add things to it. So your color is basically your background. All right. So if you crank this up, you can see how bright it gets and you can change the color of the background. So you want to set that up and you can always change it later, but get a background. Next, under volume, you want to click that and you want to add, let's do scatter. All right. So you click it and you add a scatter. And again, there's a density slider here, which you can play with. So my suggestion would be to put in like 0.3, something like that, 0.4, 0.2, kind of up to you. So we're kind of getting the atmosphere going for your composition. Next, you want to set up your camera. So let's click camera and let's click up here, or you can hit N, and we want to go to view and we want to lock the camera to the view. So here you want to kind of start framing out the setting of your composition. All right. So we'll use the cube as a starting point. All right. So you want to start adding shapes and materials and textures to make an interesting composition. A couple things while we're here in the camera. By default, there's a clipping. And what that means is if something gets far away from the camera, you won't be able to see it. It might not matter to you, but if you want, you can go up to where we were before in the view category and we can increase this. So right now it's 1,000. If I change that to 10,000, right, it just means that things that are further away will be able to be seen by the camera. All right, so that's the clipping. All right, so let's start adding some things to our composition. So the first thing I'm gonna add is gonna be a line. All right, so let me show you how to make lines in a pretty cool way. So I'm gonna take this box. I don't want it. I'm gonna hit X and delete it. I'm gonna get out of shading view because it's distracting for right now. So I'm gonna go into just a solid object mode here, and I'm gonna hit Shift A, and I'm not gonna add a mesh. Instead, I'm gonna add a curve. You can do Bezier curve, circle, path. Let's do Bezier curve. All right, so if I click this, you're gonna see there's a little curve down there. All right, so in order to see this curve, we have to give it some polygons or some extrusion or some depth, okay? So if I click on this, all right, if you look over here, you're gonna see a little symbol and your object data is now in curve mode. So if I click on it, there's a bunch of options. We're gonna try to keep this super simple. So what we're gonna do under geometry is we're gonna go ahead and find depth. So depth is under bevel, and I'm gonna increase that. And when I do, you're gonna see a tube. So you can use that to start your line. All right, the thickness, that's up to you. All right, so once you have your starting point, you wanna go to edit mode or just hit tab. So there we go. I'm gonna get out of camera view so you can see this a little bit better. So from here, basically it's like a Bezier curve. Think of something like Illustrator. So you can move these and you can rotate them. So R to rotate, G to move. But you can also do some other things. So if I select on one of these anchor points or these nodes here, if you hit E, it'll extrude or extend this line. So I can click this end here, E. So you can see I'm making these different kind of curves. You can also inflate these individual points. So the shortcut is Alt-S. So again, Alt-S. So if I hit Alt-S and I drag, you can see I can kind of make it inflate or deflate. So we can add some tapering to your line. So you can make some pretty interesting shapes that way. And again, you can still go back and you can modify this. All right, so this is just an object. So when you're in edit mode, you can fine tune what the object looks like by dragging these anchor points. When you go back, tab, to object mode, let's peek at our camera. All right, this is what I'm looking at right now. So this is pretty cool. Options, so you have this. If you feel like you don't have enough resolution, those options are over here. All right, so it says resolution preview. It's set to 12, so I can increase that. It'll be smoother, but really the one you really want to worry about is probably rendering, and you want it to be about the same. So the cool thing is if I do take this really far down to like 1, you'll get nice angular looking lines, so you could use that. If you increase that resolution, it's going to get smoother. All right, so just make sure that your render is the same as the preview, or it can be even a little bit higher too, to tell you the truth. That way when we render out your video, or in this case, I guess we'll do a still frame, you have a good looking line. All right, so again, it's just a line. You can duplicate these, and you can kind of manipulate these however you want. All right, so now you know how to make a line, and your job is to incorporate lines somehow in this design. Now, there are other ways to do it. If you can think of a better way that works for you, that's fine. Maybe in your design, you don't want to use line or curves. That's okay too. It's an abstract design. You're just going to go with it, but lines can look pretty interesting. All right, next we'll take a look at shapes. All right, so I think we're pretty good at adding shapes, at least I would assume. So Shift A, go to Mesh, and you have some presets. Like if you would hit UV sphere, keyword is UV, when you click on that, you do have options in the lower left. So make sure you check out those options, all right? So you can change like the segments and the rings, and you can kind of change the look of your object. The cool thing is when you make something, by default, this will automatically have a UV. And if you do have a UV, we can do some cool things with that with some texturing, but we'll look at that in a minute. But just realize most things do come with a UV, but every once in a while, you will not have a UV on a shape. And when you don't, it's kind of hard to work with textures. So while we're looking at shapes, beyond the basic shapes, Shift A, you have these different meshes, right? The monkey head, grid, torus, cone. So all these are in play. There are some other presets in here for you, but in order to access them, you have to go into your add-ons. So you don't need to do this at all, but if you want some more shapes or more meshes, you can come up here. So we'll go to Edit, Preferences. All right, you want to make sure you're on your add-on tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, we're going to look for some extra objects. So it says add curve extra object, add curve ivy. If you keep going down, there are a bunch of options. So we want to get through curves, and we want to get down to add meshes. So there are some options here. Anything that says add mesh, you can enable. But I'm just going to add extra objects, and maybe I'll add bolt factory. Again, there are some other options in here. You're free to add whatever you want, but just go to where it says add mesh. If you click those and you close off, and then you hit Shift A, under meshes now, you'll look, I have this thing called rock generator. I have a single vert. I have an extra torus option. Let's look at torus knot. And just remember, when you click, check out your options, because there are options down here. So that's pretty big, which is fine. I could scale it down, and it's just an interesting looking mesh. All right, so Shift A. So you want to take some time, and you want to just see what you have available, because remember, we're just kind of going with the flow. This is abstract. You're making meshes. You can modify them at your will, but we're going to try to make an interesting design by just placing shapes on a page, adding some color or materials, and tweaking the lighting. So take some time and use some of these gear. Make sure you check your options so you can do some really interesting shapes. So the question is, how are you going to arrange those shapes?